Exactly. In fact, the 13th round of the commander level talks have happened over the weekend, and it ended in a stalemate with no progress at all. Both sides appear to be taking a fairly hard view on how they want to go about. The Indian statement, for instance, put out a thing saying that they had provided some constructive ideas in resolving the problems and ways to kind of go about in the future, whereas the PLA statement came out by saying that India's expectations and demands were unrealistic and unrealistic and demand sort of say. So in a sense, we are not seeing any progress at all. We did see some progress over the last 1 year. In early this year in February, we did see some disengagement in one area, that is the Pangong Tso Lake. There it happened in early August. There was one more disengagement that happened in Gogra. But this particular 13th round of talks between the core commanders did not result in any resolution in a sense. And there were two particular points that were the subject of this discussions, but we did not see any progress at all. In fact, the statements that have come out do show that both sides are unwilling to move beyond the stated positions. And for instance, the Indian side is very, very clear that it is China which disregarded the agreements between the two sides and has undertaken a unilateral alteration of the line of actual control, which is the de facto border in a sense. And China doesn't agree to that. And China is holding on to its position because both sides have been fortifying their positions in terms of the number of troops, equipments, and kind of things. So in a nutshell, you are looking at a long haul. We have had one winter gone by, but it does look like the two sides are looking for a long-term deployment of forces on the border.
And Raji, when you talk about this constant build-up, what is happening on either side in a physical way to fortify the area in their favour?
So there are about 50 to 60,000 troops on each side. So we are talking more than 100, something like 120,000 troops on both sides of the border. And there's also been minor border clashes in some of the other areas than the current point of contention, in Ladakh area. So there have been a few other altercations in a few other areas. So in a sense, and when you have about 120,000 troops face to face, in a sense, the potential for any accidents and kind of things are very high. And it could turn into another possible conflict, like the one Galvan that happened last year, where they were resulting in casualties and so on and so forth after about more than 4 decades now. So things can go wrong, and that's where I think so far, since the Galvan clash, we have managed to, there have been in recent times, there were 2 altercations, but we have managed to solve them after a bit of pushing and shoving and so on and so forth between the two sides, the soldiers and so on and so forth. But you cannot imagine that would be the case always.
Yeah.
So the potential for an accident to happen is very real, and therefore the need for the political sides to look at the long term, have a longer term perspective. And India is very clear that India is not going to India has constantly demanded status quo until April 2020. So, and China is not willing to move along that line.
And Raji, talk to us about going into a second winter. This is going to be very challenging to endure that.
Absolutely, no. The first winter itself has been pretty bad for both sides, and the PLA forces are also not used to this high altitude deployment and so on and so forth. So they have also had difficulty, despite the fact that they are a lot more advanced in terms of their equipment, platforms and kind of things. Their training, they have been strengthening, but even then, actual deployment during winters are very, very hard on them. Even on the Indian side, there have been problems because for much of so many years, we have not really actively deployed our forces, especially in high altitude areas, for several years. So in a sense, to get the forces actually on the border during winter, we also faced a lot of hardships. But I think both sides are somewhat more attuned to the high altitude deployment and the kind of requirements that needed to be met for a longer term deployment, including during winter. So both sides appear to be more geared are more prepared in terms of looking at a winter deployment of the forces.
Yeah.
And I don't see any any compromise happening anytime very soon, because China is also very clear. China's next party Congress meeting is coming up next month, next year. So again, that's also kind of a time, in a sense, a sensitive time for them to show that they are very strong and they are powerful. They don't want to be seen as compromising or willing to kind of
stepping
give away
back
their position. And
in any way. Raji, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.